It's Wednesday night, and you know what that means. We're back live on the Big Mountain.
Welcome back to the Big Mountain for another Wednesday evening live show. I see our chat is going strong already. Got some of our normal mountain dwellers in here. Stephen, J.E.H. Bill, that college football guy. Fellow Wyoming fan, Justin, Joseph Lindley. And of course, we've got Immaculate in the chat. He is going to join us on the phone here in just a few minutes. But before we do our discussion with him, and we got quite a bit of things we want to get his opinion on, we want to talk real quick about some Ohio State changes, Steve. Mm-hmm. So they're losing some coordinators. And what do you know about that? What the heck what are they? You know, when you win a natty, everybody seems like they leave and go for more money somewhere, and that's what's happening. What's up?
Yeah, I mean, well, coming off a national championship, for them this year was national championship or bust. They win the national championship, so fantastic, great year for them, well deserved. I mean, they had the best team on paper at the beginning of the season. There were some bumps in the road. But now, coming out of the season, major changes. They are the odds-on favorite still currently for the national championship next year, and a lot of that is the name, the brand, and the fact that they just won it. But the OSU team that takes field next year is going to be completely different than the one that played this year. Not only are they losing tons and tons of players, offense, defense, all over the field, but now they're having to replace, Ryan Day is having to replace both coordinators. So, it hit the news about a week and a half ago. Jim Knowles was leaving Ohio State. His suitors were Oklahoma and Penn State. He ends up coming. He's a Philly guy. He comes home to Pennsylvania, and goes to Penn State, signs a $3.1 million deal. This is a guy that James Franklin had been targeting for a while. When he left Oklahoma State and went to Ohio State, James Franklin was trying to bring him in here. It sounds like obviously they were very successful. They won the national championship this year, but it sounds like maybe he was ready to leave there. I think, the Ohio State fans, they basically demand perfection every year.
Right.
National championship, beat Michigan, everything. It can wear on you. And maybe there was some personality conflicts between the coaches on the coaching staff there. So he was ready to get out of there. Penn State was a great spot for him, landing spot. With Tom Allen moving on, Penn State needed a defensive coordinator, and James Franklin got his guy. This is the guy he's been wanting. Yeah. And we've talked before about Penn State, their administration kind of finally stepping up and doing what the big boy schools do to win. So they pony up with $3.1 million. He'll be I believe the highest paid coordinator in the country now, which is huge for Penn State, a school that traditionally underpaid coaches by a lot. So that was a huge move for Penn State and just a big hole that Ohio State needs to fill. And then, they're looking at that. They were looking at a bunch of different candidates. They're also competing with Notre Dame, who lost their defensive coordinator at the same time. And then the news comes out, Chip Kelly, their offensive coordinator, who finally, the maestro this year that got all these wonderful pieces working together, was leaving after just 1 year in Columbus, going to the Raiders, signs a $6 million contract. I mean, makes perfect sense for Chip. There's a lot of speculation he's more of an NFL guy, wanted to get back to the NFL. He left a Big Ten head coaching position at UCLA to go and be a coordinator. That's what he wants to do. He wants to be a coach. He wants to not deal with all of the things that go with being a college football head coach, the recruiting, the politics, the fundraising, and all that stuff. He just wants to coach ball. So now he's back in the NFL. We're going to have to do any of that crap.
Yeah.
And he's making twice as much money, making $6 million. So he's where he needs to be. And I don't really necessarily look at this as a bad omen for Ohio State. This is what happens, like you said. But combined with all of the personnel changeover, to have to replace two coordinators, it is huge for a program who, again, is the odds-on favorite. So just wanted to talk about that, bring that up. And keep it in our minds as we see who they hire and how that's going to transition into Ohio State next year, what we should expect for them. We're a college football betting site. When you look, I think they're over-under what is 10.5 games, which they're pretty much either at 10.5 or 11.5 every year. So it's just a factor to look into as they rebuild, as they start. They'll have a new starting quarterback next year, new defense. They are returning, two of their best players, Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith, who may be two of the best players in the country. But a lot of turnover there. So big move for Penn State to get Jim Knowles.
Yeah.
And big changes for Ohio State having to replace both coordinators.
Yeah. I saw a headline that Knowles thinks that Penn State is very close to, being a national, a natty contender. I mean, I think they already are a contender, but, kind of pushing over that hurdle they can't seem to get over, at least in the Franklin era, or, for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And he thinks they're super duper close, so we'll see.
Yeah, they haven't won a national championship since 1984.
That's a little bit ago.
You and I were, running around in well, not quite diapers, but
maybe
not far out of diapers, but it's been a long time. And it looks like Penn State's doing the all-in push this year. We saw it from Ohio State last year. We saw it from Michigan. Looks like Ohio State's doing that, and I've seen some experts predicting Penn State may be the preseason number 1 coming into next season.
Wow.
With how many people they're returning and how many people that, just basically going all in. But really, what does that matter? It doesn't mean anything. It's just even more pressure. They're gonna play at Ohio State next year. They're gonna host Oregon. So we'll know. We'll see what the results are.
Sure.
And if it's the same thing, losing 1 or 2 games a year. And getting into the playoff, or are they ready to actually run the table, or at least really make a farther push? I mean, they got to the semifinal this year. Are they ready to take that next step and win a national championship?
Sounds good. Well, thanks for that update.
Yeah.
Always things going on. I know I'm getting ready to actually start following college football again with transfers and signings and everything. We've been doing a ton of this. Call it realignment, call it Pac Mountain West litigation stuff. We're going to be dropping an FSU update tomorrow, ACC FSU Clemson litigation update tomorrow, because everything's in the Supreme Court right now, so we'll get that on our channel tomorrow. And we have a special drop early next week. I'll get into, we just had another interview, and I'm going to drop that later on. I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag quite yet, but pretty exciting. Before we get to Immaculate, I just want to make sure we're good with our slides, Mr. Producer, because I saw we missed the first one.
Yes.
Okay, we're good. All right. I made special slides just for Immaculate.
Okay.
Yeah, because he has the coolest logo of anyone on Twitter.
X, yes.
It's very, very cool. But anyway, so I see we have people that are, commenting. Keep it up. We'll get back to some Q&A here later on. I know JEH talks about the news drop from Front Office Sports regarding the ESPN Fox CBS. Actually going to bring that up with Immaculate, so we'll get to that here in a minute. And I see everybody's talking about the weather. Yes, if you're out there in the sleet and the freezing rain, please stay safe. Bill driving, please be careful. We're not supposed to get it till early morning, I think,
4 a.m.,
tomorrow.
I think. Yeah.
But yeah, if you're traveling out there, please be very, very, very careful. Justin in Farmington, New Mexico. I'm not sure if I knew that or if I did, because I have an aunt and uncle that live in Farmington, New Mexico.
Okay.
So I know Farmington very, very well. Yeah.
Who is it there? Can you scroll back up a little bit there?
I don't know. The scrolls get a little crazy sometimes.
Yeah. Somebody mentioned that they saw on Locked On Big Ten, UNC to the Big Ten. I can tell you right now, there is no movement, no anything that suggests UNC to the Big Ten. I didn't watch them. I don't know where they got that.
Yeah.
But that would be the most shocking thing in the world if any time within 2025, if there was any announcement of UNC to the Big Ten. I don't see it happening at all, and probably not anytime soon.
Okay, that was Sean. Keep it coming. We will get back to some of your chatter and some of your thoughts here a little bit later. Got some comments on the size of your thermos, the size of my mug, and of course I'm drinking a Pilsner again. Let us know what you guys are drinking as well. With that, it is time for Immaculate. So let me get him on the line here real quick. Uh-oh, what did I do? Don't hit that button, JY. You're going to hang up on him. Immaculate, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Gentlemen, good to be here. Great show so far. I'm looking forward to talking with you guys, and here we go.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate your time. I know we have been conversing on X here for a little while, and you mentioned that you'd be happy to come on one of our shows, and I figured a live show was the best time to do it, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So, I want to start first here with kind of the ESPN ACC extension. We here on the mountain kind of assumed that was going to be extended. I think most people kind of thought that it would be. We get news here last week that it was. And of course, we're kind of a little gray on anything else other than, yes, they want to extend. Of course, there was some rumorings from Ross Dellinger about scheduling changes for Notre Dame. So just want to get your take on, what your thoughts were when you heard the ESPN was going to continue on here with the ACC.
Oh, absolutely. It's a good starting point. I kind of thought all the time that they would go along with them. I did think that they would use their leverage a little bit stronger than they did, and we don't have a full picture, so maybe they did, and there's other parts that we don't know about. So from what we've seen, I thought it went really well for the ACC. There's still talk about some continued negotiations, but so far, all they really kind of forced them to do is schedule their top 3 brands more against Notre Dame, which is good for ESPN.
Right, yeah, and that's really all that we know thus far. I think I would agree with you. It's going to be interesting to see how much more we learn, if anything. Some of that we may never, well, not never, but we may not find out for quite a while with what went on there with that extension with the ACC. Real quick shout out, we have College Football Addiction on here with TJ. Appreciate him having us on last week. He's doing a whole series with the Big Mountain this week. So if you guys are interested in some of that, check out his site, College Football Addiction. Appreciate him jumping on to the chat here as well. So with that, I mean, did you think here, Immaculate, that there would be anything with, the lawsuits changing? Now, that's going to take some time. There was speculation regarding, while they went through this process, maybe they were able to give, FSU and Clemson, something more through this process to help alleviate some of those lawsuits, to maybe potentially have them pull the lawsuits. We're talking speculative here. But what were your thoughts regarding that? Do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, I'd say TBD, to be determined.
Yeah.
I don't think that we heard near enough to really be able to gauge one way or another on that.
Yeah.
Clearly, Florida State and Clemson are not pushing this as hard as they used to. So I would tend to think that there's been some movement. What that is, though, my guess would be the same as anyone else's, right? You guys might know more on that. For me, it's just kind of a TBD for now.
Yeah, for sure. And I would just say, I know Steve has a comment here, but as I mentioned just a little bit ago, we're dropping a episode kind of on the Supreme Court ruling, or not rulings, but hearings that may be coming up in both South Carolina and in Florida. And you're exactly right, especially in South Carolina. I mean, they have given extension after extension after extension, which, some could speculate that means, maybe there's a settlement in the works. We don't know if that's the case. I hate to maybe even put that out there because it is pure speculation. But really the driving force right now in Florida is the ACC. It's not FSU, to your point, Immaculate, that the ACC is going to the Supreme Court saying, hey, we want you guys to step in here and rule kind of in favor of us, the ACC, and against FSU. We don't think that's likely, but the impetus to have movement is coming from the ACC, not so much FSU. So I think that's a really valid point, that while especially FSU was going just all out, throw open the doors, bust open the doors, and just do as much as we can there early on, what we've seen here over the course of the last few months really kind of just settling down here a little bit. And we don't know what that means, to your point. I mean, we really don't know what that means.
Well, and so I have a follow-up question to that, because for you, Immaculate, I've been following you a couple of years now, and you're really plugged into kind of the national pulse, where we kind of focus on, JY's focus on Mountain West and Pac, and I'm really, Big Ten and how the ACC. I know you're plugged in with the Big 12 and just the whole national college football landscape. What's your feeling on this coming out of the extension? Just kind of like as far as the vibe, do you feel like this maybe puts realignment on hold among the Power Four for a little while, other than the Pac trying to grab some other teams? I can't imagine that they're going to be able to grab any power conference teams, but do you feel like this is a true pause, putting things on hold, or do you think this is just another kind of red herring step, and we'll have new news again in 6 months or a year?
Well, first off, I am a Hawk fan, go Hawks, and Big Ten. come from that realm, so to speak. I've kind of gotten more and more into the Big 12 just from invitations, shall we say. On a national side, I definitely think that this slows things down. And I think slowdown likely comes from you're not going to get some of these schools to move until the Big Two are ready for it.
Yeah.
And that's what I think the slowdown is. It's not a settlement. It's not anything else other than, as you guys alluded to and talked about yourselves, they're just not ready. They're not ready for it. I think, things like House settlement, maybe congressional action, governance, these are the big national issues. And they're not fun to talk about or listen to by a lot of people. But for the administrators, those are the things that are going to keep them up at night. So when they're talking, do we want to add in more schools at this time just to complicate this further, with more possible legal cases and whatnot, I think that that's on hold, at least until we know more in April.
Yeah, that's a great point. We're going to get to, if there's any sort of congressional action, House settlement questions here in a little bit. I just have to say, we've done several episodes on kind of NIL, deeper dives into NIL, deeper dives into House settlement. And we're not here for views. That's not why we do this. Honestly, we do it for the love of college football, the love of the conferences that we follow. But I will say that it's interesting, to your point, that those are the two really major items. This House settlement is just game changing. And there's going to be the litigation that comes after it and all that kind of stuff. But, it's talked about. I even get questions. What's House? Now we just shorten it to House. And I get people like, what's House? And I'm like, how do you not know what House is? And the episodes we've done have been very underwhelming in terms of people that listen. And it's not fun to talk about. Speculation it's fun to talk about speculation. But the real, where the rubber meets the road is this House settlement, is what's going on in revenue sharing. It's just not the sexy thing to talk about on podcasts. So.
Yeah, and if I could take, I want to pose something to Immaculate here on this topic. I know you have that on our list of topics.
Go for it.
So, Immaculate, you and I, we've disagreed in the past about how soon, how imminent some legislation is. But I think overall we agree on the big picture of this House settlement it's not an end-all be-all. It is highly important. It's going to set a little bit of a framework, but there's other things that have to happen if we're going to fix college football. And that could be anything from antitrust exemption, further legislation addressing the employment issue and all that kind of stuff. So that's basically where I want to go. What are your thoughts on the House settlement, and how does that kind of relate or turn into potential legislation? What are your thoughts on that, on what they're working on? And do you agree with me? I think we're in agreement that you need the House settlement to go through, plus legislation to address some other issues that are not addressed in the settlement.
Yeah, 100% agreement on House. And actually what we're seeing here, they had this objection period. They already got a preliminary approval, which is the same judge doing preliminary and finals. So I'm not a lawyer, but it kind of seems to me like that's where they're leaning, and they're already making plans in the certain athletic departments for this to start in July. So they all seem to think it's going to go through. But there's been some of these people who would be part of it who are dropping out and joining, like Fontenot, and there's another couple cases. So this doesn't look like this solves everything. But what I'm actually more interested in House than the NIL side is the governance side. Mm-hmm. Keeping in mind the Power Five, and I'm still going to call them that in this case because they are defendants. And the NCAA had a bit of a falling out in 2014 about potentially leaving if they didn't get some way to deal with this. They were already seeing this problem in 2014. And so I think for them to sit down as defendants on the same side, they had to make some agreements first. And I think we're going to see those also come out in April. And people are probably going to be blindsided by that. Like, that's not an obvious part of House, but I think it's going to be there as agreements by the defendant parties in order to work as one in House. So that's really my kind of exciting point, in which I think fans should be interested in, because that's going to determine the future of college football.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of to talk about, I think, here come April, when something's going to happen. I agree. Everybody seems to think this is going to get passed, and then we'll see the fallout from that. But yeah, a lot that we're going to be able to talk about with kind of where college football heads here into the future. Are you able to take a comment from a commenter, Immaculate? They want to know, how do you have so much knowledge as it relates to college football? Are you an insider or are you a super fan?
Definitely not an insider. I'm just an obsessive fan who, funny enough, this whole thing kind of kicked off for me back when West Virginia was the center of the world in realignment. And my interest was actually in Iowa State. Saw some potential bad things happening to them, and that got me beyond just the fan perspective and more into the analysis and where could this go, what could this do to them, how is this going to be for the state, that type of, whatever you want to call it. It's not really super fan or insider, just more of an analysis.
Yep.
And that from there, it's just kind of continued. It used to be like every month or two we'd maybe get one little detail, and now it's just every day. Sure. So you kind of get caught up in it. Yeah,
I get that feeling. Ever since we started our podcast here about 17 months ago, every day I feel like I'm more caught up in it, and sometimes I'm like, wow, Jay, well, you got to slow yourself down here. Things are getting a little crazy, but
and sometimes you hear stuff too, right? Like people will reach out to you and tell you things, but I don't consider that insidership because I have to treat those as just data points.
Sure, absolutely.
It's like you don't know because ever since I stopped doing a certain show, those have slowed down. So I definitely know that there are people who want you to say certain things. Mm-hmm. And so that's my kind of caution when people are like, okay, who are the insiders? Well, be careful because sometimes things you hear are what someone wants you to say.
Yeah, everybody has an agenda. If there's some things they want leaked, they'll make sure they get leaked. And I coaches do it, ADs do it, donors do it. If they want something to happen, they will leak things that are good for their cause and maybe stay quiet about things that they're hearing that don't support what they want to happen.
Yeah.
Well, we may get to one of those or a question about one of those when we get further down our list of topics. I would like to go back and just get your thoughts on some of the conversations we've had. We dropped an episode here last week where Steve kind of talked about bigger picture types of items here with the ACC, with the SEC, and with ESPN, being the owner of the IPs of these two conferences. Again, I'm not going to rehash that episode. I know it's gotten some play on different channels. There was an article actually written about it. And my wife was upset they referenced you as Steve and not my good friend Steve.
Yes,
but be that as it may, just wanted to, I think you've probably seen a little bit or heard a little bit about that. Just wanted to, kind of get your overall feel of ESPN, kind of being not so much in charge, but, do you see them potentially being a matchmaker for certain entities within the ACC and SEC?
Oh, 100%. And first of all, let me say, I saw that video and I thought that was great. In our DLD or our community, whatever you want to call it, you get some questionable stuff, but I thought that was very solid. And as Steve said earlier, at times we don't agree on things, but I pretty much agreed with the whole thing. And I don't think this ACC ESPN deal negates what you said at all, just because there's so much about it we don't know yet.
Yeah.
If anyone would doubt that ESPN would do something like that, I would direct you to 2 points. We've talked about this. They direct paid for Texas and Oklahoma to leave the Big 12 a year early.
Yep.
Direct payments, which then those schools pay to the Big 12. So you want to call that an indirect payment to the Big 12 or not, they were making it happen. And it goes beyond that. They then turned around and helped out the Big 12 in landing Colorado. So they are very much involved with this stuff. So I do agree that the first thing to happen would probably have to be something between the ACC and the SEC. Mm-hmm. I also agree. I think it's North Carolina and North Carolina State. Some folks say North Carolina to the Big Ten. the day the North Carolina Board of Governors got involved was pretty much the day that the idea of North Carolina Big Ten died.
Yeah.
In my opinion. I do think the ESPN will get involved to help make that happen because I think North Carolina wants it to happen.
For sure, and they are. It depends on who you talk to. I know there's love and hate in the ACC, but and Steve's talked about the brand power of UNC just in general. That baby blue. I'm sorry, I should call it North Carolina blue. Mm-hmm. I'm not a North Carolina guy, so I call it baby blue. But and just the Jordan aspect to that. Massive basketball presence. I want to ask you about basketball here in a minute too. But you had pointed out to me about when people kind of push back on ESPN can't really be that influential in this, or ESPN can't be driving it to that level, and that was kind of the title that we gave that episode, that ESPN is driving at least this portion of potential portion of realignment. I want to be clear, potential portion of realignment. And you pointed out just what you said there, the Texas and Oklahoma payments, for people that want to say, they wouldn't do that. I mean, we have recent history that, they are involved in those sorts of things. So I appreciate you bringing that out, and as well as Colorado to the Big 12. Also, I think you had mentioned something to me about basketball and the brands. When you look at North Carolina, NC State, Clemson potentially being the bigger basketball brands in the ACC, and with the kind of resurgence or just power that now is the SEC basketball programs. We're a football pod. We're very much focused on football. We don't dabble in basketball much. It's not our thing. But again, that's just another piece that maybe supports that ESPN could be interested in that. Did you have any other comments on that?
Well, yeah. I mean, the SEC brand in football, I don't care if they have a down year or 2 down years or whatever it is, it's solid. It's not going anywhere. Those fans are rabid, and the whole country respects it and watches it because ESPN puts it on, for most of the slots. So for them to make more, it's basketball units. It's the NCAA tournament, and that seems to be the memo that went out. And schools like Arkansas have gone so hard in the paint on this, part of my term, but they're saying that they're going to pay at least $1 million to every single starter. They're going to have at least 5 guys on the team, of a 12-person team, that are making at least $1 million. They stole Kentucky's coach, so there's a lot of movement in the SEC for basketball. And when you look at North Carolina, obvious, but the other 2 teams that you brought up, North Carolina State and Clemson, they went farther in the tournament than North Carolina did. Yeah. And that's kind of the change in the ACC about who the power schools are there in basketball. Those are not the traditional powers, North Carolina State and Clemson. So if you're looking to do this in the future, and you look at them as both having good basketball or football value, they also bring good basketball value. And if that's a kind of like a secret little sauce for the SEC going forward, that just adds more value to that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we've seen with the Big East, signing that big basketball contract with Fox, and in the money that they've made, we've seen where, obviously basketball can be a big moneymaker, and I agree with you completely. And JY and I were talking about this off camera earlier, and I said, it almost seems like the SEC about 5 years ago just all of a sudden decided to care about basketball, and now they're just dominating it. It's just, it's amazing how quickly that turned around.
That's that money difference, that extra amount that they make over everyone else, besides the Big Ten. I think that they just started investing that into basketball. I think that they respected what Yormark was seeing and envisioning in the Big 12, and not just him, but others. There's obviously something in the industry that they kind of knew was where you add on top, where you get more frosting, so to speak. And that's where they want to go. So when you look at those 3 additions, and you look at their basketball power, not just in what they, could potentially bring in football, you kind of maybe got to look at that as, okay, if you're looking at a 4th, does that also have to be a basketball power?
Good point.
So I want to circle back to legislation. We
Okay.
kind of touched on it earlier with the House stuff. And like I said, I've been following you on Twitter X for a couple of years now, and you are one of the people who is talking the most about potential legislation affecting the NCAA. So I want to pose to you kind of a two-part question here with that. One, if tomorrow, if you were in charge and you were king for the day and you could enact legislation, what legislation would you put in place to fix college athletics, if it needs to be fixed, to improve or to add stability or whatever? And then the other part is, so the second part of that is, what do you think is actually possible now? Now, I mean, we're in a we try to steer away from politics as much as possible, but we're in a completely different world than we were 6 months ago with the political landscape, who's controlling, Congress. We have a certain party controlling, all three branches of government, basically. So what do you think, first of all, how would you fix college athletics if you could? And then B, what do you think is actually, let's say in the next 2 years, doable that you think could happen?
Wow, that's a huge question. In terms of being the guy to fix it, I don't know if I'm smart enough for that. But I think there's the obvious things, right? Like we need to have some type of rule system that everyone follows. NIL, transfer portal, has been an absolute Wild West. I've been calling that for a while, and not saying that's from me because it's not, but everyone kind of in the industry has kind of taken on that terminology because it's just so obvious. It's a Wild West. This is not good for the players, not good for the schools, not good for fans. So that's probably number one. But in terms of why I think that's coming down the line, I've said it's inevitable. And my reasoning for that is this looks to me like it's too big to fail. It's one of those too big to fail situations where if this starts going bad and you start to get lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit stacked up on these schools, you're talking a too big to fail situation. And that is something to move politicians. I don't care what party someone pulls for. No politician wants that hanging over their shoulders. So I've always felt like no matter who got power, there was going to be a solution, but depending upon who got in power was going to decide what that solution looks like. And so I think now we're going to start to see what that solution is going to look like because now, as you're saying, we know who's going to control it. But the bill that's coming that we might hear about here in just a few weeks is supposedly a bipartisan written bill. So my hope is that it's not going to be something too far in any one direction. It's actually going to be well crafted and kind of right down the middle. That's my hope. I think that they got to bring some regulation into this so that way it doesn't continue to spiral out of control. That's my hope for it, and that's what I would focus on doing is try to rein it in so that way it's fair for everyone involved, but the hardships that we're actually creating by this current Wild West, those go away.
Yeah, I've never thought of this as a too big to fail, but I think that's a really good analogy because at some point, and I don't know when that point is, none of us, I guess, do, but we're clearly headed down that path. And I've never thought of it that way, but I think that's a really good analogy to use here.
And when more than 50% of the entities involved are public universities,
right.
That lends itself to politicians wanting to get involved.
Yeah. Well, I need to get to the West Coast. I said we try to keep you here for 30-ish minutes and don't want to take too much of your time, but I'm a Mountain West guy, I'm a Pac guy, and I got to get your thoughts on some of this as well, Immaculate. So let's start with, in terms of the Pac, let's start there because that's maybe the biggest unknown right now. Do you have any take on where you think they're at with additions, media value? We just dropped an episode on Monday that kind of questioned the leadership, and I get it. They want to be tight-lipped, as I said in that episode. The Pac fans and the supporters, they say, hey, they're being tight-lipped because they're going to do everything right. We trust Gould and the leaders and the ADs and all that kind of stuff. And then the naysayers, say, wow, they're lost. And so, again, you talk about the Wild West. The speculation on the Pac right now is very much the Wild West. So do you have any thoughts? And I'm not asking you to, pinpoint you think it's going to be this number or this school or anything like that. Any thoughts on where the Pac is at right now?
Well, when possible, I like to try to take lessons from the past. And the past of what we learned about the Pac from when it was the Pac-12 was that even with a great lineup of schools, a great lineup of programs, great competition, you're still going to have some weaknesses that you just have to account for because you're in the western part of the country, population, viewerships, all of that. If their plan is to have a Western-only conference, you're kind of making the same mistake that you've made in the past. But you're doing it with nothing against anyone, but less valuable programs than what you had in the past.
Sure.
So if you're aiming to get up into near the realm of where you were before by doing the same thing with perceived lower value programs, you're going to come short. And that's why I've just thrown one idea out there, but there's other good ones. But you're going to have to reach East. You're going to have to be able to showcase games at that noontime slot. You're going to have to reach out to the population markets, while at the same time answering the major logistics problems of asking schools to transport all of their teams out west for games. Not just football, not just basketball. I mean, those are what we care about as fans, but an athletic director has to care about all of that, because now you've got to compete in recruiting and telling these kids, you're going to have to do that, but hey, it's not that big a deal, right? And they're going to look at you like you're crazy. Because you're talking about telling kids you're going to come back, 1, 2 in the morning and jump into class whenever you got class. So it's tough because we have to remember these are schools first still. And for a lot of these kids in these other sports, that comes first.
Well said. Well said. I mean, that is something I think that gets forgotten far too often. We do it here. We're focusing on the sport. We're focusing on football. And too often we don't talk about them being student athletes first. It's a great point. And to that point, I want to get your take maybe then on the Mountain West. So you talked about, the Pac maybe needing to look further east. We see the Mountain West did that for UTEP. Now that's Mountain Time Zone, so I guess that's not too further east. But that was the first edition that they had as a full member. Really fits right in there to where all their schools are. We just had a conversation with AD Center. He talked about how much closer they are to New Mexico, to GCU, than they are to really any of the Texas schools that they play. And it makes a lot of sense. But then when you look at NIU, kind of getting you into that central time zone for that time spot, it is football only. So they only have to worry about traveling for that one team. And that was something A.D. Frazier really focused on, when he talked about splitting up his sports, having football in one conference because it is the revenue generating sport, and then everybody else maybe more in a regionalized conference. And we're working on actually getting A.D. Frazier on the pod here really soon as well. Just wanted to get your take on maybe specifically NIU and what you think that does for, we'll use the Mountain West because they added them, but any Western, whether the Pac or the Mountain West, Western time zone conference here.
Yeah, real quick on the UTEP part, them being a Texas school is kind of a misleading thing because, as you point out, they are in the Mountain Time Zone and they are so far west that Texas is a huge state.
Yes.
It's a different calculation when you're dealing with them. So that was a unique and interesting pickup for them. But when you move to Northern Illinois, it's a very different situation. And I remember there was talk about them in Toledo in the beginning.
Right.
And I think that they were probably looking like, hey, full members. And these type of logistical problems, I think, got in the way. And so then it came down to, okay, joining just in football. And I think that was, Toledo, they've got a lot of connections there in the Ohio, Michigan. That's their conference. I think that wasn't good for them. But for Northern Illinois, just gets them out of those MAC games early in the week. That's the first thing that Mountain West really offered them.
Yeah.
Was better time to help them fill up their stadium. Remember, these guys got to sell tickets.
Yes.
They weren't selling tickets. So you guys are going to help them sell tickets, number one, to football, again. They are in the Chicago area in terms of, the DMAs and whatnot. And I think that is a good hint to look at how you solve the problem being a Western Conference trying to look east. What do you do? I think you kind of have to accept the limitations of the situation and find a solution like this. So that's how I see it, is it helps get them to the east without taking on all the problems of taking on an Eastern school.
Agree. To me, it's a massive win-win for both the school and the conference here. And you hit on the main points why it is so important for NIU to get their football back into, mainly Saturday. We'll have to see what the TV deal is here for the Mountain West. But getting them out of those, Wednesday night games. We all, as I said before, we all love MACtion. We love watching MACtion, but it does not help the attendance in the schools in any way. Steve, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, really as a follow-up to what you were just talking about, when JY and I have talked about the Mountain West and the Pac, I continue to beat the drum that Texas should be one of their main priorities, getting into the state of Texas. Now, for the Pac, there was some rumblings maybe a couple months ago that they were, looking. I guess they made an offer to Memphis, and it just wasn't a good offer. They were also looking at Tulane and maybe even like USF, a school in Florida. But a lot of that has really cooled down. And you mentioned having more time zones, having more time slots. So I've thrown this out there. I think Texas should be a big target getting into the state of Texas for both of those conferences, both the Pac and the Mountain West, and whether that's Texas State for the Pac, or we've talked about Tarleton State coming up from FCS to FBS as maybe a candidate for the Mountain West. My contention is you have a central time zone school, so it helps you with your time slots, and B, Texas is obviously, like you said, a huge state, a growing state, massive population growth, great TV markets, and people who are just excited and interested in college football, some donor money, for all of those reasons. And I'm just interested to see, do you agree with that? Do you think that maybe that's fool's gold? Maybe there's no valuable properties left in Texas to gobble up? I'm just curious as to your perspective on that.
Oh, no. Texas is a must. Even if it comes down to just we couldn't do the big play and we're just going to have to kind of settle for now. At that point, then I think not only do you take Texas State, but as you're pointing out, maybe you also take Tarleton State. It's one of those, like I also talk a lot about Sacramento State. Sacramento State and Tarleton State, in my opinion, are probably, other than the obvious ones like North Dakota State and whatnot, but two FCS programs up and coming that are probably your highest potential value just because of where they are.
Yeah.
But there's tiers in Texas. And from being what we've been doing here and talking with Texas fans, there's tiers. And they don't like to help each other in those tiers. And so when people talk about maybe mixing a Texas State and a UTSA, because they're so close, it's this natural rivalry. Yes, for all the reasons above, except for the fact that it would be UTSA bringing Texas State up to their level.
Yes.
And what I'm talking about like how much they make, what they can do in the money game. Mm-hmm. And if Texas State wants that, and UTSA will probably never admit it, but I can't see them wanting to do that. Like, look at what Texas State can do with what they got. I mean, do you really want to go against them on an even market? San Marcos is like one of those, the epitome of college towns.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to take them on evenly. So to me, I look at that and say I would go with like a UTSA in a northern Texas. Yeah. Northern Texas is right on the periphery of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. That's a must. You have to be there. If you're trying to be big-time football, you have to be there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We actually had a commenter ask if you could speak to Sacramento State. You just did that, so I don't need to ask that question. The last thing I just want to ask you, and then we're going to let you go because it's been a little longer than I expected. You talked a little bit ago about sources, and we all talked about sources, and they kind of give you maybe what they want to, and maybe they're feeding you just a line, and again, not a lie, but a line. And so today, and this came up in the chat a little bit earlier, there was some reporting from Front Office Sports about ESPN, Fox, CBS still being open to participating, I believe was the exact wording used, open to participating in some sort of bid or process with the Pac media rights. Did you glean anything out of that report? I have some opinions, but I don't want to state them yet. I wanted to hear if you had anything from that reporting.
Yeah, and to give a little shout on that, that's Amanda Kristovich from Front Office. And
Thank you. She's
quite
fantastic.
frankly my favorite.
Yep.
Mainly because she actually comes down into the trenches with us and mixes it up a little bit at times, and you don't find that otherwise.
Yeah.
So she's a favorite of mine. I always like to give her a shout out when possible.
Yeah.
But she's also very good at what she does. She's the person that I go to whenever this stuff starts to go on in DC, and we were talking about that earlier. When these meetings start to happen there, she will be the one that will be there giving us the day-to-day, the minute-to-minute reportings of what's going on. And so I take what she has to say very seriously on that. And I do believe that those are some of the networks that, like the Pac and Octagon are probably talking to.
Yeah.
But also another thing that people need to know that some of these writers are very good at doing is there's things that they're told, and some of that they're allowed to tell us, and some of it they're not. But what they can do is they can get creative with their writing, and if you're doing this for a while or you're just good at it, you can glean things from the way they write stuff. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's what she was doing. There were certain words in there. The one that I pointed out was participating. The general sense of participating in something is that you're participating in someone else's activity.
Yeah.
Someone else is putting it on. I tend to pull from all of that what she was saying is that those schools are those networks are interested in certain aspects of what the conference might have to offer. I don't see them as main partners, though, from what she had to say.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that. I know you and I were kind of DMing on that a little bit of what was said and how it was said, and she actually replied, I believe, to one of your posts as well. And I appreciate you bringing, I should have said her name. She is fantastic. One of the few that I trust 100%. If our viewers are not following Amanda, you absolutely need to do that. She is phenomenal.
She's covered all the business issues of college sports, the labor, NLRB stuff,
yes,
the employment issues. She's been deep into all of it.
Yeah.
So, and Front Office Sports doesn't put their stuff behind a wall, so at least for now,
yes,
so people can have access to it without paying. So
absolutely, I don't do the paywall thing. That's for sure. I just not something I'm interested in. So, well, Immaculate, hey, we thank you so much. We took a little more of your time than I expected, but thank you so much for coming on. I know our viewers enjoyed it. Up over 100 here easily, chiming in, listening to what you have to say. So thanks for your time.
Absolutely, man. When you're having fun, it goes by quickly, and it went by quickly. So anytime, man, just hit me up. I had a good time with you guys, and hang out and chat. And if folks want to ask questions there, I saw a couple more pop up. We'll chat away.
Very good. Yeah, if you want to hit some in the comments section, that'd be great. If not, well, I can't keep up with it. I'm not as good as some, but I appreciate your time, sir. We'll talk to you later.
It was great having you on.
Have a good one, guys. Thanks again.
Uh-huh.
Yep, you too.
All right, there he is.
I want to make a comment on the last question you asked him. I want to chime in on that.
Yeah, the FOS report?
Yes.
All right, do it.
Similar to what he said, I take that as all of those networks, they have late night spots to fill.
Yes.
So I take that as none of them are ready to dive in, like he said, and be the main partner to buy the whole package. But that maybe they would jump in and get a smaller package, which we've seen. The Mountain West had CBS Sports and
Right.
Fox, and you
Right.
know, we've seen split packages happen. So that's what I take that to mean, that they're all interested, but they don't want to foot the whole bill. They don't want to do what ESPN is doing with, ESPN. They don't want to do what they're doing with the SEC.
Right.
They maybe just want to buy a couple nighttime slots to,
Right.
to fill their night late.
Like their Thursday night slots potentially.
Thursday night, Friday night, even a late Saturday night,
night?
a 10 o'clock start game or something like that.
And could it even be? I mean, we're talking various windows. Could it be sports? And I'm not saying the Pac wants to split up, football from everything else or basketball from everything else, but could it be participating in a football only type of bid?
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
and some conferences have done that where they split their basketball package and their football package.
Yeah,
and
right.
All that, so.
And I think that's a little dangerous at the level we're talking about here, but it certainly could be done. And as Teresa Gould has said, they're looking for innovative partners. I mean, they're talking about this outside of the box type of thinking. So who knows what they're really looking at right now?
I really think, and broad brush with both the Mountain West and the Pac, we usually talk about them together.
Yes.
I think both of them are in a similar boat. Now the Mountain West has done some to address that, pulling in NIU. But I think they're in the same boat with what he talked about. They have the same problem that the old Pac had.
Yes.
They're so West dominated. They just don't. So I think either they're gonna, if they want a single partner, they're probably going to have to go to a streamer, which will make them more money, potentially could make them more money, but it's less exposure.
Right.
They're not on the cable, and on TV dial and on the cable lineup at the top. So if they only want one partner, an all-in partner, I think they'd have to go that route. Or what's probably better for them is to build a package together, kind of like the Big Ten did with Fox, ABC, or Fox, CBS, and NBC, where they may have to sell parts of their package, have a deal for a Thursday night game,
right,
a Friday night game, basically kind of sell it in pieces instead of the whole kit and caboodle at one time.
Yeah. So I have a quick announcement, and then I want to get to some Q&As here. We'll go through the chat here real quick, everybody. Hey, if you like the episode and you appreciate Immaculate joining us, you must give this sucker a thumbs up. You got to pound it right now. We're so thankful Immaculate gave us his time, was able to come on. We're planning some other live Q&As with a few other guests here through the off season as well. So again, if you don't have to give the thumbs up for us, but at least give it for Immaculate. Again, we appreciate him joining us. So an announcement on the next interview that we did. It's going to drop hopefully on Monday. My plan is to get it out on Monday. I teased this on X today, Steve. I said, hey, Hornet fans, and I don't know if we have any Sac Staters out there right now or not, but Sac State fans, be aware, we may have something happening, and we do. Before our live episode, Steve and I sat down, had a conversation with head coach Brennan Marion with Sac State. We'll get that posted on Monday. We talk about kind of where he's been, what kind of brought him to this level. We talk about, of course, Sac State football, NIL and transfers. What else we talk about?
Well, we talked about his amazing career trajectory.
Go
offense. 10 years ago, he was a local high school coach in our area.
That's right.
He's moved around and worked for some legendary coaches.
Yes.
Built a great resume, and now he's taken over a program that, there's so much buzz about this program.
Yes.
They're in the news, they're in the headlines. They're out there. They're wanting to transform and do new things, great things. So it's a really exciting time for Sac State right now.
Very exciting. You guys know we've done several updates. We had Josh Wood on a little bit ago. Some people have asked me about President Wood, Dr. Luke Wood as well. Maybe in the future we can have him on. If you're following Sac State, or if at least you're following our channel, you know that within the next 4 to 6 weeks, we're expecting to hear some sort of announcement coming from Sac State. I've given my opinion of what's going to happen, but we'll have to wait and see what they have to say. So let's get to, yes.
There's a good one on here. We're going to get to some questions.
Let's get to Q&A right now.
Let's target this one right out of the gate.
Go for it.
So Mr. Ed, he's from San Marcos, Texas. We were just talking about the school.
Okay.
Texas State. We've talked about them. There was some buzz. Has it cooled off? Are they ready to pull the trigger? Are they going to be the next member of the Pac-12?
Well, what we've heard recently, and I'll use the Amanda Kristovich reporting, and it's what has kind of been said over the last 3-4 months, that the Pac wants to announce their media deal before they announce additions. Well, they're not going to have their media deal until March at the earliest. So we're not going to hear anything in terms of Texas State being an addition to the Pac. I think Immaculate made some great points there in terms of the Texas schools. I still hold firm what I have been saying and what I have heard from sources, that Texas State is in negotiations with the Pac. That doesn't mean it's imminent or will happen, but I think personally, my opinion, it is likely to happen. We're not going to get news on that for a little while yet, especially if they're reporting from Front Office Sports and what has been said by Gould and others, that they want to do the media deal first and then name their additions. And it also goes in line with what we talked about, where it's kind of come out, and AD said after last week's meetings, another member, whoever that member is, it's not going to change the value of the conference. Mm-hmm. That's what the AD was saying. So whether it's Texas State or UNLV or fill in the blank, the media deal is going to be the media deal. So it's kind of a plug and play type of situation. So I'm still with Texas State. It's just going to be a little while until we hear from them.
I have to say, I don't really fully understand that logic of why that they want to wait. Because who knows how long it's going to take for this media deal.
Right.
We had another episode drop recently where we talked about just kind of the public relations of the Pac. With the Pac, it's very important, in my opinion, for them, or what they want to do, to maintain that spot in the public atmosphere as a, hey, we're fixing the conference, we're growing, we're on our way towards regaining, which they would hope they're regaining kind of a power conference status. And in order to do that, I think you need to have positive news coming out. And right now, it's been so long with this, the media deal, because there's so many things going on, and the Pac and the Mountain West are both negotiating this at the same time.
Yeah.
So for me, I have a hard time understanding that, because I think it's really important for them to keep good headlines going, it's just good PR. And if they could announce, we just had recruiting signing day, national signing day here, and that's something recruits ask about. What are you guys? Are you guys, for schools, are you FBS or UFCS? Are you, a power conference, not a power conference? Right. Those are things. And so for me, for recruiting and just the public atmosphere of getting kids to come there, transfer portal, recruiting, you want to have positive headlines in the news. And for me, the way they're waiting, I don't understand that approach, I got to say.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said it, because if I said that on X, I'd have haters.
Well, I mean,
I don't disagree with you, but I found myself some nice little troll.
Okay.
I don't want to call them trolls, because I don't think they're trolls. They're just passionate fans that are thinking I'm hating on the Pac, and I'm not hating on the Pac. I'm just telling it as I see it.
And I'm definitely not hating on the Pac. I've said from the very beginning, I think, especially, the Beavs and the Cougs, they got completely screwed over by what happened with the Pac, and I want them to come back and be a viable conference again. And I'm not really hating on them. It's more of, I don't understand.
I agree.
That timing. Maybe there's someone out there that understands it. They can put a comment in here. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The way they're managing the message.
Right.
Managing the message, managing the timeline.
Yeah. So I want to get back to just something real quick. I saw a couple different comments about this whole UNC Big Ten thing. You heard Steve say early on, it's a nothing burger, as you've said before. You heard Immaculate, even before he got on, or before we had him on the phone, say the same thing. It's a nothing burger. That's not going to happen. I will say TJ, College Football Addiction, says Locked On Big Ten was basically just referring to Jay Williams saying UNC would be in the Big Ten. Reese didn't shut it down, so that was confirmation. LOL. Yeah. So okay. So one person said one little tiny thing, and apparently people caught on to it. So it's again basically a nothing burger.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's an issue.
I mean, the Big Ten would have loved to have UNC, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. There was interest there.
Yeah.
But now in the current situation with this new extension and the political landscape in the state of North Carolina, now with a new Big Ten president who has different priorities, I don't see anything. There's no indication that's going to happen anytime soon.
Let's keep going down here. I know we talked about Sac State. Fia says the Beavers got a nice 4-star quarterback to back up Murphy. We're going to be getting into more transfer portal, signings, all that kind of stuff. Hopefully February, we're going to be deep diving on that. We actually talked about maybe next week doing kind of just a high level look at the Big Ten, the Mountain West, the Pac schools, and how they did here during signing days and things like that. So that might be next week's episode. We do kind of a high level overview of that.
And I'll tease a little bit of my thoughts on that. First of all, Malik Murphy, I think, was a great signing for them. I've been following him since he was at Texas. Very highly talented recruit at Texas. Was in a battle with Quinn Ewers for that starting job. Quinn Ewers obviously won the battle. Transfers to Duke, had a great season there. Probably one of the best seasons that a quarterback has ever had at Duke, and is now going to the Beavs. I think it's a great pickup for them. We'll have to look at what are some of the other transfer portal pickups for Mountain West and Pac teams and Big Ten teams.
Bobby Hansen asks, are Virginia and Virginia Tech a package deal, or can they go to separate conferences? Kind of like, we've done a lot of talking of UNC, NC State. I mean, I think your opinion is kind of it's the same type of deal, right? In Virginia, or maybe not?
Sort of, but not as. So here's the thing. So
I want to know.
Here's the deal. I
want to know what the thing and the deal are.
Yes. So 15 years ago or whatever, when Mark Warner was the governor of Virginia, and we had the realignment, we saw the Big East crumble and the ACC take on teams. That was the case at that time because Mark Warner, the governor, said, if you want one, you're taking both. Kind of they're staying together. I don't know if that's the same political landscape now today. And also, here's another part of the deal. Neither one of those schools has nearly as much value to either the SEC or the Big Ten as UNC does. UNC is the prize there as far as just value, brand value, and all of that. So I don't know. With UNC, basically the Board of Regents there can kind of hold them hostage and say, okay, you want UNC, they're the big prize, you got to take NC State. With Virginia and Virginia Tech, and I like both of those schools. I hope they continue to play good football. I mean Virginia Tech, I think they play great football. Their atmosphere is awesome. The whole Enter Sandman at the beginning of the game, and their coach Brent Pry, former Penn State defense coordinator, I think he's doing great things. But neither one of those, there's not enough value there that they're going to hold anybody hostage. So maybe if the legislature, whoever says, okay, they come together as a package deal, then it's more likely, I think, that the Big Ten and the SEC will be like, well, we don't really want either one of them enough to make it worth our while.
I agree. There's bigger other fish in the sea than to have to kind of take them both. Not a knocking on the programs. It's just probably asking too much of those two conferences.
The only thing I could see is I have seen speculation over the last year, not really recent, that the SEC at some point, if they may want to expand up into both the state of North Carolina and the state of Virginia, increase their footprint. So in that case, and we talked about this last year in our College Football 2030 project, which was a lot of fun. So maybe there's a scenario where the SEC were to grab all four of them: NC State, UNC, Virginia Tech, and that would be more about just establishing a market footprint than actually the brand value of those schools. So I don't know if that's too likely to happen.
Couple comments here in terms of Texas State. So Joseph Lindley, he's one of my good ex-followers here. He says they might need Texas State to finish the TV deal, and then AAR says if the Pac-12 conference doesn't get a TV deal soon, Texas State U ain't jumping anywhere. I don't think that'll hold them back. I think Texas State would be very, very happy to get an invite from the Pac, but that's kind of what we're saying with like the silence isn't reassuring type of stuff, right? Like it kind of goes into that same vein. What else we got here?
Well, FIA says the ACC will lose members at the end of their TV deal. Very possible. We dropped an episode about talking about how ESPN, if they had their druthers, would love to move some of those top brands over to the SEC package. But honestly, if that were to happen, I still think the ACC has done enough to ensure their viability at least for the next 10 years. It's my understanding that if they were to lose teams, there's already programs that are lined up that will be basically approved, and it'll be a quick and easy. And we speculated on some of those. USF, Memphis, Tulane, maybe some other programs in the states of Virginia and North Carolina.
We got some people talking baseball. I'll let you guys have it in the chat. I know the Beavs have a really good baseball team. Other than that, I got nothing, and so I'm not going to comment because I'll sound stupid. But CRO Crew asks about New Mexico State University at a reduced amount to the Pac. I don't think New Mexico State's on the Pac's radar at all. And I've got some New Mexico State fans that are on my X that are fed up with this whole thing because they don't know why they're being passed over by the Pac, and they don't know why they were passed over by the Mountain West. And screw them all, they basically said. Yeah. And I feel bad for you because you're being passed over, and I don't think New Mexico State is on the radar of the Pac at all. I think, a lot of Pac fans, well, not a lot, some Pac fans think Texas State is a leap too far. Well, if Texas State is a leap too far, Lord knows what New Mexico State would be. Again, that's not me judging that university, but I think I don't see it.
I mean, just the biggest thing that hurts them is just the population in that state, and with their best opportunity would have been the Mountain West, but with the Mountain West, first of all, already having New Mexico, having the Lobos, and now having UTEP, there's just no room at the inn.
I agree with you. So there's some talk about JY's team. Who's his favorite team? And JEH is right. I am just a Mountain West fan. I like all Mountain West teams. But you have to have one team that you root for, right? And I do. And Mario is correct. It's the good old Wyoming Cowboys. I got the Rams on tonight. But yes,
how can you not be a fan of Wyoming? The colors, the atmosphere there, Memorial Stadium.
Some people they hate them.
It's beautiful. Well, and also I think Colorado State, their location, everything is beautiful as well. But I don't understand how anybody hates Wyoming unless the border.
Well, it's the Rams don't like the border war, and there's others. But yeah, I mean they're just good old wholesome Wyoming peeps. But anyway, that's my team. All right, Mario, he's a Lobo fan.
Okay,
they play Colorado State tonight. Oh, okay, nice. I'll tell you, Lobos basketball kicking ace.
We need to do a basketball update with our Lobos guy. What's his name again?
Oh,
I'm so bad with names.
Yeah, it'll come to me.
Yeah. He was great. We did a preseason preview or one in December.
Yeah.
We should do another one with him.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Mario, he's booing my shirt because the Lobos are playing the Rams. I did not wear it for that reason. I just haven't worn the Rams shirt in a while. I'm like, I gotta change it up a little bit.
So Kevin says he thinks Texas State would be a solid addition, but only if that means there are more additions to come, Memphis, etc. Honestly, and I'm gonna say this so people don't call you a Pac hater or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that the Memphis ship has sailed for the Pac. Unfortunately, they came out with a first offer, and the offer was not good, and they haven't come. There has not really been anything that happened since then. And I think Memphis and Tulane are waiting for that ACC offer.
Agreed.
The ACC, a year ago it looked like the ACC might die on the vine, but now they're looking healthy. They got this extension, and for Memphis it just makes more sense. Memphis, Tulane, USF are more natural fits for the ACC, and ACC still has that autonomous four status. All of those reasons, I don't see Memphis as a viable option for the Pac right now. Maybe in a couple years, if Memphis doesn't get that ACC invite, and the Pac can establish themselves and start making some money and maybe juice the offer up. But at this point, I think it's Texas State. Should be Texas State. They need to get into the state of Texas, and I don't know if there's any other viable candidate for them in the state of Texas right now. So I wouldn't put that as I'll take Texas State if I can get these other ones, because I'm not sure those other ones are an option at this point.
Well, shout out to Clint. Says, great show tonight. The show is growing. Yes, it seems to be. And we just keep doing our thing, and people, I think, for the most part, enjoy us, so that's good. And he says, he never thought he would see a breakdown of Oregon State's baseball lineup in the comments. But I told you, there's awesome baseball stuff going on. And see, we are a lover of all things Pac and Mountain West. Mm-hmm. No matter how much people think I hate the Pac, I don't hate the Pac. People won't believe me, though. But it's true. All right, what else we got here? I got more Texas State, a lot of Texas State stuff. Yep.
So Tyler Nelson talks. He says, JY and Steve, ask Immaculate about the national championship game ratings time. Well, he's gone at this point. I don't know if he did a comment, but I want to chime in on that.
Okay.
So the biggest thing. So first of all, the ratings overall have been fantastic for the college football playoff. They got really, really good ratings. The thing is, comparing year over year ratings, ratings for basically everything other than a Super Bowl and NFL have been dropping. So you got to compare them. They're still getting fantastic ratings. I think the biggest thing that hurts the national championship game, and it does it every year, and it's probably going to do it again next year, is how freaking late it is.
Right.
And I think it's going to be a few days later next year. That's something that they need to solve. They need to move up the calendar. I think that'll be a good topic of an off-season episode, I think, for us. Let's talk about how we can fix the college football calendar, because at that point in mid to late January, people are not thinking about college football anymore. The pinnacle of college football is New Year's Day. That and anything after that, the more days you go after that, the more the ratings are going to fall, because people switch their attention to NFL playoffs and then into spring sports and all that kind of stuff. So to me, that's the biggest reason why the championship game, the ratings were lower.
I'm clapping for Noel Ramirez.
Okay.
Because he's on his 4th Corona.
Woo! Cheers.
Well done, sir. I need a bartender.
And that was
bartender.
That was probably 20 minutes ago.
That
so
probably was.
He
might be on
5th.
6 now. Yeah. And Immaculate, I see, is in the chat responding to some people. Luke, thank you so much for being on. I know he dropped some good old stuff on X as well. I'm going to try to keep going because we're getting past our hour.
TNT is mentioned a couple times with basketball and whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just going to we've talked about it before. I think TNT is going to become more and more of a major player in airing college football, college basketball, basically college sports.
Yeah, for sure. And I am breezing through these last couple, guys. I apologize if you're giving us some that I'm missing. Okay, so Noel asked, only because he brought up his Coronas. See, if you talk about drinking, we'll be sure to talk about your comment. What if the Pac tries to claim Gonzaga as its 8th school, and it gives more money per school than they would get if they added another football program? Well, they have to have another football program.
Yes.
So you have to have 8 football-playing members, full members, to be an NCAA conference. So while I understand your point there, they actually currently right now the Pac is not a full NCAA conference. They have to have another football playing member. So that kind of destroys that idea. But Gonzaga's getting, I believe, a full share with the Pac. That's how much their basketball program is valued. And I've seen some people say that potentially, this is rumor, speculation, whatever you want to call it, but the reason ESPN may be interested in the Pac is because of Gonzaga. And that wouldn't surprise me. That's how big of a program they are.
We talked about this with Immaculate. We're kind of at a point where the college football revenues might be tapped out, the media revenues right now.
Yes.
SEC has got their big deal with ESPN. NBC got their deal. ACC just extended. There may not be a growth, at least over the next 5 years in revenue for college football. Maybe in a CFP there is, but not the regular season deals. So one area conferences are really looking at as how can we increase our revenue is basketball. The way they do the allocation with the shares from the NCAA tournament, it's really if you're successful and you move on and you do well, you get more money. So it makes programs like Gonzaga incredibly valuable. And I'll say, I think both the Mountain West and the Pac have done a really good job addressing that, adding some basketball, with the Pac adding Gonzaga. Did they ever add St. Mary, or that was just something that was talked about? Okay.
It's still speculation.
So, and then the Mountain West adding GCU.
Yep.
And UC Davis. I think both of those conferences, that's revenue. Like that keeps you alive. That pays the bills kind of thing. And so I think both conferences did a good job of addressing that. How can we, other than our football members that we're all looking at, what other ways can we add some revenue? And both of them did a good job with basketball programs.
Yeah, for sure. And the Pac is a fantastic we're not a basketball pod.
Yeah.
But I know that they have good basketball. Look at who they've added. Really good basketball conference. Tyler Nelson says, JY and Steve, I have a question for you both. If you were running a conference and you're looking at streaming services for football, which streaming services do you prefer? You want to go first?
Sure.
Go.
So first of all, if I was running it, I would not want a streaming only package. I would want to do kind of a simulcast deal, which I think ESPN with the SEC, where they have it where, you know, the games are on either the SEC network or one of the ESPN brands of cable, or they're on ABC, or a lot of their games you can see on their ESPN Plus,
right,
you know, package. So it's like a combination deal. So that would be what I would prefer, something like that. But if I was looking at just a streamer, just a streaming partner, who I would prefer, you know, Amazon probably for the reach and the numbers, because there's so many people have an Amazon Prime account.
Yeah.
You know, Netflix is good there. If I was really looking at something unique, and kind of what the Pac has talked about, and I was ready to go all in with the streamer, I'll tell you what Apple did with Major League Soccer. It has been amazing. They don't get obviously the exposure that they got on ESPN, but the money that they're bringing in, the deal that they were able to sign, were basically was revolutionary, and they're bringing in massive amounts of money into MLS, which is increasing the value of the MLS franchises tremendously. We're starting to get up the MLS franchises. You know, you and I both remember when MLS was created, you know, back in the 90s, and they were, you know, each franchise probably worth like 50 grand, you know, and a pack of bubble gum.
Yeah.
So, but now, I mean, we're talking
double bubble though.
Yeah.
Not any bubble gum.
Yeah.
Double bubble.
We're talking now, you know, multiple $100 million organizations getting up there close to the, like, you know, NFL. They're not close to NFL, but approaching that like $1 billion mark eventually. So the way that the revenue has grown, I think that model that they did with Apple, if you're just talking about money and revenue, that's the way to go. But the big trade-off with that is the exposure. It's hard, you know, it's hard to, you got to really want to watch MLS. Like, you got to go to Apple TV and buy their subscription. And I just don't know if any college football conference is going to be ready for that right now.
Justin, we thank you again, sir. Go-to source for all things Mountain West. That makes me happy. I try to do our best with Mountain West content. I like to think we're one of the top that continually puts out Mountain West content. That is my goal, and I, of course, always appreciate the super chat. So thank you. And of course, go Pokes.
Yeah, and Justin, you know, JY has done an amazing job. We were just talking about this. We may the ADs that he's gotten on from the Mountain West, the guests that we have for just a little YouTube show, two guys in their basement doing a YouTube show, and we've had all these great ADs. I loved that interview that we did with the UTEP AD recently, who's going to be joining. My daughter, my college-age daughter, who does not give a crap about college football, was like, I watched your interview with the UTEP AD, and it was really good.
Super nice guy,
yes.
Jim. We could have gone on that. It was the longest one we've done, 50-some minutes, and we could have gone for another hour. Yes. I mean, just so gracious with his time. We could have talked about all kinds of stuff with him, and appreciate him. And as I said, we're lining up the Northern Illinois AD, Frazier. We have that booked to tape here in a few weeks. I have had more requests for that interview than any other interview thus far on our pod. Ever since NIU joined, I have a lot of followers, Husky followers on X, so they're going to love the fact that we have connected with and have scheduled an interview with AD Frazier. He will be very gracious of giving us his time as well. And you know what? It's just you ask, and hopefully they say yes. And so far, I've had some people say yes.
If you ask, then you shall receive.
Well, we try. So I'm going to go back to the question real quick, that being the streaming question. Yes. So, Steve, we agree too damn much. So, number one, I agree that I would want the TNT Max thing is awesome.
Perfect.
And as a Mountain West fan, I'd love for that to continue. I think that could switch. I could see them being one of the main partners with the Pac, honestly. But that is awesome because you're getting the streaming and the linear all in one bundle. Now, I think the question probably was like, no, I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about streaming only, Tyler. And I'm with you. My number one by far, it's not close for me, is Prime. Because, well, not everybody. A ton of people already get it with their Amazon Prime account. It's not, yes, it's extra, but it's not just Netflix where you're just getting that, or just Apple. Yes. And I don't mean just Apple. Yes. There's more to it than that. Yes. Without a doubt, Prime is my number one for anybody that's interested in that space. Netflix, I struggle with until they start to build that more. There's still those one-offs. We heard that from Bob Thompson, where they're doing the events, but they're not doing like legit streaming of sports. Right. So I'd be very hesitant right now to go Netflix until they're showing that they want to have, conference game, like multi-games on a weekend or throughout the week. I'd be very cautious with Netflix. Apple, I'd be okay with. But again, that's that extra thing. So for those three, Prime is absolutely number one, no doubt, easy number one. Apple comes in at 2. Netflix, I wouldn't even go for Netflix. Nothing against them. I'm a subscriber. I like watching shows and movies, but I don't go there for sports. And that's the one thing ESPN has. When you go on the app, you just scroll around. You can see all the games. I'm not going to Netflix to scroll around. Now, again, if they build that, that's different. But I don't want to be the only guy on there for the Pac or the Mountain West or anybody. That is just a leap too far for me.
Yeah, and for now, like you mentioned, they've been focusing on just events, and I don't know if they want to. But I'll tell you, I mean, the amount of Netflix subscribers that use it for streaming is massive.
It is.
And if they do decide at some point to go all in on a conference or a league, the number of people that go there, like you're right. There's more subscribers for Prime there's a lot of people that have Prime that they use Amazon Prime for their free shipping and never do the stream, which I think you were there at one point. I had to tell you about all the free stuff on Prime.
Yes, I'm like, I got to start watching it.
Whereas Netflix, people go there, if they have that subscription, it's because they want to stream. It's the younger generation, the millennials, Gen Z, whatever, they want to stream. So I think they're the sleeping dragon. If at some point they do decide to build what you're talking about, when they really go all in, it could be huge. But for now, it's just not there yet.
Peacock. Matt is asking about Peacock. I think that's kind of a crossover-y thing, isn't it?
I'll tell you, I'm a Big Ten fan. I freaking hate Peacock. Okay. I hate when games are on there. They do some that are multicast, where they'll have it on NBC and Peacock. But they've been doing more and more where they're right on. They're appearing. Penn State had a game this year that was only on Peacock. I think it was a primetime game. And all it was people bitching about how they couldn't find it on.
I remember
figure out how to watch it. So.
Yes, JEH would love for it to go to Prime. I have zero. I would have zero issues with either conference having maybe not only Prime, but a significant amount of games on Prime. I would have no issue with that. I'm with you, JEH. Mario, thank you. Great show. Go Lobos. He gets his first super chat. He's got the one in the balloons over there. Thank you, Mario. I know you've been on here several live shows with us. We love all your comments. We know you're a Lobos fan. We had some people asking about, I think it was Mario, or somebody was asking about the AD for UNM. And I had somebody on oh, go ahead.
No, if you
may go back up? Too far?
Finish your thought, and then I want to take Tyler Nelson's question.
Okay. What was that? Oh, AD for existing Mountain West schools. And, I'm being a little respectful for existing Mountain West schools because of the ongoings right now. We were very fortunate to get AD Classy with Fresno State to come on here last month. I wasn't sure their eagerness to do so just because of, everything that's going on. But he was very kind to come back on with us. I would like to have AD Dickey back on as well. And I do want to get more of the Mountain West 2026 ADs on the channel. I'm being a bit respectful for them because of just what's going on right now. I don't want to push the envelope too far. I'm sure there's things they can't say. We wouldn't go down that path anyway. But, we'll see. I absolutely, UNM has a new AD. Would love to get him on. and all of them. I'd love to get all of them on.
The timing is just not right.
Timing's
right
not great
now
right
for the current ADs.
Yes. All right. So Tyler Nelson, go ahead.
Yeah, Tyler Nelson asks, what about ESPN going to direct-to-consumer product, ESPN becoming its own streaming service? Well, I want to take us back to that great Bob Thompson interview we did.
We reference that quite often.
Yes.
Very intelligent guy.
The guy is he has so much experience and knowledge in this business. So, and here's what you have to remember is, yes, ESPN is putting money into the ESPN Plus and going to, and having a direct-to-consumer product where you don't necessarily have it on cable, but you pay for it separately.
Yeah.
Well, when they do that on day one, the ESPN channel is not going to go off on everyone's cable channel.
Right.
They're going to want to leverage both of those markets for a long time, or both of those avenues. So with them, I see it similar to a TNT Max. Where you can get it either way. If you have cable, you'll be able to watch the games on ESPN. If you don't have cable, but you have your ESPN Plus standalone service, you'll be able to watch them that way. That makes the most sense. Then they can tap into two different revenue streams. They can serve all markets, people who cut the cord and only want to stream, and the old fogies like us who still have our cable service. They can still get their money from us. So I don't see it being an either or. I see it being both.
Yes.
For a long time.
Well, we're going to wrap this one up. We're getting close to 10 o'clock on the East Coast. That is our witching hour when my wife says, cut it off, JY. But I do want to do one other thing real quick. JEH says, any word back on the Texas State AD? No, I have not heard back from them. I will say I try to communicate either through X or through direct emails, and I don't have a ton of luck through emails. And I will say that AD Frazier with NIU actually responded to somebody on X asking him to come on our channel, and that's when he got back in touch with me. And for some reason, my emails were not going through. So some of it may be just an email situation when I'm going direct to email. So I'm going to do a plug here, Steve. Okay. I'm going to do it.
All right.
If there's certain ADs you guys would like us to interview, or at least reach out to,
tweet them.
If you just stick it as a comment or as something, say, at AD Frazier, which don't do him. We already got Frazier on. But, the Texas State guy or something, just say, hey, at, Joe Schmo, be great if you could go on the Big Mountain and have these guys have a discussion with you. That actually works. I'm finding X, I have haters on X.
Yes.
I also find it's a great communication source.
It is.
Yeah. So, we are always up for having any interview, well, maybe not any, almost any interview on our pod. I would love to hear from the Texas State AD. As I said, you're going to hear from Coach Marion with Sac State here on Monday. We have AD Frazier with NIU already lined up. And we're happy to do more. We really enjoy those conversations. And I know our fans, our viewers, our dwellers, I got to say the right word, our dwellers enjoy those as well. So we're all about it, and we will do what we can to get you the information that you're looking for. So I think that's it, Steve. You good?
I'm good.
All right, with that, we thank you guys for watching. One last thank you to Immaculate. I know he came back on the chat. He has been chatting with people here. Bob is great. We agree, Immaculate. He's fantastic. Thank you guys so much. And, we're back next week, Wednesday, 8:30. We'll have more fun. Philip, I'll get a full thing of beer again. And, we'll see if we can get Noel to drink 6 Coronas next week.
All right, let's do it.
All right, with that, again, pound that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.